So yeah, I finished this show. So Psycho Pass is a cyberpunkian psychological thriller made by Production IG and co-directed by Naoyoshi Shiotani and Katsuki Motohiro, which Naoyoshi Shiotani has done some things. And it's an anime that didn't have a manga. It's one where they just sort of were inspired by stuff like Ghost in the Shell and a lot of other stuff, such as Blade Runner. And they're just like, hey, let's just make this. And they did. And though I tried initially reacting to it, the first couple episodes, I finally finished it, at least the first season. I haven't watched any of the other stuff yet, but as I've stewed with this show for a little bit, I've realized that I have some stuff to talk about with it. Not a lot of it good, but stuff to talk about nonetheless. But pretty much, what is the plot of Psycho Pass? Pretty much it's set in a futuristic Japan in which everything is governed by the Sybil system, pretty much a biocomputer network thing that measures the different biometric levels of the citizens, their brainwaves, their mentalities, which is known as their psychopaths. And of course, should anybody psychopaths hit a certain threshold, that gives them cause to be eliminated. Specifically by the Public Safety Bureau's enforcers, who have these handheld pistols called Dominators, which pretty much are able to fully measure a person's psychopaths, and determining on how far gone they are, the weapon will change to suit the situation. So it could either paralyze them, or in most cases, it will eviscerate them. And pretty much the plot is seen through this newbie inspector, Akane Tsunemori, who we follow her day one on the job, just like, all right, I'm looking forward to being an inspector, who pretty much is a handler for these enforcers. So these enforcers are people whose psychopath levels identify them as criminals, and they've done different stuff in their past. And it pretty much is this story of Shinya Kogami, who is the main enforcer to Akane Tsunemori, who has a history with our main villain Shogo Makishima, who previously killed his partner. And yeah, it's kind of this cat and mouse chase back and forth for these first 22 episodes between Shogo and Shinya, ultimately culminating in the end where they meet face to face. Again, I am only reviewing season 1 of this because again, that's all I've seen, but obviously I know that there are more. There's like 2 other seasons, there's movies, and of course different manga stuff. And I do also have to say, I watched the extended edition of Psycho Pass. It's kind of like what the ReZero director's cut was, where it takes, instead of 1 episode, it's 2 episodes, and there's some extended scenes in it. So I technically only watched 11 episodes, but it was 22. And let me give praises right out the gate. I really liked the style of this, specifically the first couple episodes. That hooked me right away because it very much had that cyberpunky Blade Runner type futuristic style to it. The soundtrack was really good accompanying it as well. It's actually interesting now thinking back on this show, now knowing that it was an anime original. But despite it all, it did look very, very good. And it does really hook you with the intrigue in the first bit of it, because I mean, the opening scene is the meeting of Shinya and Shogo. But it's one of those things where it's just like, I don't understand what's happening. And then it's like, all right, now let's show you everything that led up to that point. Just to hook you with the action of it, and then you get into the story. And that's pretty much all I enjoyed about it. Going into why I'm really making this video is to talk about how I don't get it. I mainly don't get why this is that popular. I mean, I understand why it's popular, because though I am someone who definitely now much more appreciates drama and the back and forth and the intrigue of characters, this is one that definitely takes patience, I would say, for you to really get into it. I mean, it didn't help that I was reacting to the first couple episodes of this and then dropped it before getting too much farther in, and then I came back to it all these months later. I think it was just because this wasn't really a show that I think was good to react to, just because while there is some fun stuff in it, of course there's really good action when it happens, I would say 80% of this show is very long dialogue scenes. Like, though it's all important, obviously, it's like giving context to certain scenes, the character backgrounds and development and stuff like that, but a lot of the times it felt like it brought the pacing to a screeching halt. It's like a lot of stuff would be developed, and it's like, oh, we're hot on Shogo's trail, and it's like, all right, let's go get him, and then it would be like a 20-minute dialogue scene. I mean, again, it might have been different if I actually watched the show not in the extended edition. Like, it might have gone a little faster, but I don't know. Just with the divide of having an OPAZ and a couple less scenes. But now I'll talk about specifics. So from here on out, spoiler warning for Psycho Pass. So if you don't want to know, well, go watch it. This was one of the ones where I liked the beginning and I liked the ending, but the journey to get to there, I didn't really enjoy that much. Looking back on it, like, the entirety of this first season is just Shogo's testing of Shinya, just sort of putting his psychopath to the test. And the whole thing with Shinya, and what I feel like wasn't really answered that well, or at least not to what I'm remembering, is Shogo's whole thing was that the psychopath's reader always read him as a non-threat, even though he was actively killing people. But I get that that was the whole point was that this whole Sybil system, it's all just a joke, a sham, which it does delve into with like the director of all this being a robot. I'm sure going into the future seasons, it probably delves into a lot more of the specifics, because this first season mainly was the back and forth between Shinya and Shogo and the resolution of that, while ultimately setting up the future, what will be the chaos of the battle against the Sybil system probably. But I'm going to talk about specifically the ending. One of the things I openly did not like was the fact that Masaoka, the veteran enforcer, because there's the whole thing when it's revealed, it's just like, oh, Ginoza, the like glasses guy, it's like that's his son, and just the whole thing where it's like he still cares for them, but they got a job to do. And then the sad thing was that at the very end, like Masaoka and Ginoza, like they have a brief fight with Shogo, and like Shogo has like this grenade, and he's just like, oh, what are you gonna do? And of course Ginoza's just like, no, just capture him, that's what the job is. And of course Shogo throws it at Ginoza, and then Masaoka goes and catches the grenade. It's like, oh, he sacrificed his job for his kid, like in the end. But while I liked that, I felt like it was just so rushed, and just like I felt like it could have been in a different season, maybe more towards the end. I feel like they just threw him in to just like have the veteran guy die for the setup for the future, which I mean I figured was gonna happen anyway. And I do like the poetry that Ginoza then loses his arm, the same arm that his dad lost. It's just like by the end, when everything all wraps up, it's like, oh yeah, Masaoka died. It's just like, oh yeah, it's sort of just like this thing. It's like, oh yeah, we have to have the old man mentor character die as well, because that's just what's supposed to happen. But I felt like they jumped that a little too soon. I felt like they could have maybe had that go on for a little longer before maybe in like season 2 or 3 have that happen. And then the ending where it ultimately just ends with Shinya putting a bullet in the back of Shogo's head. Again, I get the whole thing that like Shogo was just meant to be the representation of the system being so flawed, but it's just the thing at the end of the season, it's like Shogo gets defeated twice within the span of like 2 episodes, because the whole thing with him and Shinya, they have to fight at the top of that tower, and then Akane comes and knocks him out, and then he's captured, then he escapes again, kills Masaoka, and then Shinya kills him again. But I get it's this whole thing where Shinya is going against the whole unit and all that, and going against the bureau, and it's the whole thing with Akane working with all them, showing how far she's come, because ultimately it's this big drama thing and like a coming of age and atonement kind of story. And I liked the very, very end where it ends with this new inspector girl coming in doing the same, you know, salutes. They're really framed the exact same way, but this time Akane's the veteran inspector giving the exact same spiel that she got in the first episode. You know, it's a cool full circle thing. It's like now she's the mentor. If for nothing else, I'm kind of curious to see how that goes going into the future seasons, but as it stands with Psycho Pass, I don't have a need or really a want to continue watching the remainder of it, just because as it ended, it seemed like a fine self-contained sort of just one-off thing that goes full circle, and it's like, all right, cool. Like obviously there's still more that needs to be dealt with like the Sybil system and like the main director, but it's sort of just like I feel like that all could be dealt with in another season, and from what I understand, the whole story isn't even over yet. So that's why I'm kind of just like, I'm fine having closure right now on this and not really jumping into anything else that may just be continued for the sake of continuing it. As it stands as a score though, season 1 of Psycho Pass, I give it a fine 7 out of 10. Again, it had its moments that really piqued my interest, but the majority of it was stuff where it was world building, it was character development, I get it, but it just was a lot of so much dialogue, so many very slow scenes, all for a lot of characters and story that I wasn't that invested in. All of it ultimately ending in a way in which it felt like, I feel like this could have just been a movie. It kind of felt like that's what it was meant to be, but then they were like, no, let's make a show. Again, let me know down in the comments below if season 2 and 3 are at all worth watching, or if any of the movies are worth watching. I don't flat out think that this story sucked. Like, I actually enjoyed a good chunk of it. Again, mainly the beginning and ending. A lot of the middle stuff, I was just like, I really like Shinya as a character. Again, he kind of falls in that same sort of character love that I have for characters like Kiritsugu, Spike Spiegel, you know, with that kind of like spiky hair, with like, you know, really good gun training, with a dark, twisted backstory, but still with a hope for the future. But yeah, I had more to talk about with this show than I thought I would. And well, I figured I would put a cap on it since I started watching it on the channel and never got around to finishing it. But hey, yo, it was another show to scratch off the anime scratch off list poster back here. And yeah, it was fine. But either way, this is my review for the first season of Psycho Pass. And joining me for many other videos of the sort, be they future anime reviews, reactions, gameplay, and everything else to be coming out soon. So until next time, I'm Lancer. Thanks for watching.